Hello, I'm Dane. Welcome to another episode of Dax Jutsu. In today's episode, our goal here is to create default parameter columns. Defaults in such a way that whatever you click or select in a parameter column or in a parameter slicer, rather, those columns always appear. And those columns must be somewhere in between the other columns. Okay, so if our goal is to add columns after the default columns, then it would be very simple. So let me show you. Mm, Let me add parameter. Oops, sorry, parameter. Mhm. Oh no, not this one, but this. Okay, and for example, we want another column. So let's say geo category. What else do I not have? I'll look at the dates. Let's say name of day of week. And I'll add this parameter column to a slicer. Okay, again, if our goal is to be able to add columns after a certain column, then this will be very simple. As you can see, day of week short is always selected. But what if our goal here is to always make our month or geo appear? So whatever we select in the parameter slicer, month and geo column should also appear, like this one. I selected year and month and geo are there, quarter, month, and geo are there. Okay. So what do we do? Let's go to our parameter table. What we will be doing is we will create extra column. So I created two calculated columns, and this is just random. So if the parameter order number is 2 and 3, then it's default, otherwise it's selectable. And I created another calculated column which references parameter because we won't be able to directly reference this parameter column in a measure or a table in another table. Thus, we created a duplicate of it. Okay, so now we have our views. So what's going to happen is that these two rows here will always be visible no matter what we select in the slicer. So to do that, we need to create another table. And our goal is that in that table, these two rows should always appear or should always be in a pair with the other rows. So this is my calculated table. And what I'm going to do, I'll just copy this and we'll discuss the formula one by one. Okay. The first is we create our default. This is a calculated table filtered to the default rows only. So let's return that default. Oops. Mm, Rename this to default view 2. Okay, so we now have our defaults. The next thing we want to do is we want to know how many rows we have as default. So obviously the number of rows we have is 2. So we have this default row count. Turn that as a table, and that's it. The next thing we want to do is to create a series of numbers, starting with one, and then we end that with whatever the default row count is. So we go to rows. Let's just try this instead. Mm, uh, So this will create a row of three, a table of three rows because we add one more, and we'll find out later where we need to add another row. And what select columns does is we are simply renaming value to row. Yep. And here we go. Value has been renamed to row. The next thing we want to do is to select our selectable or to create a calculated table of our selectable rows. Here we go. And then we want to cross join rows with select. So now our selectable rows have been exploded three times. Okay. So what are we gonna do? What are we going to do next? So we need to add the default rows. So after cross joining, we need to add a column called relationship key. And that relationship key is this. Let me just return this one. Okay. Okay, so what is relationship key? Relationship key is what we'll be using as our relationship key to our original parameter table. And in this case, we'll be using a many-to-many relationship. So from relationship key to parameter order. And you have to make sure that even though it's many-to-many, parameter default view table is on a one-to-many relationship, or I mean, many-to-many relationship to the original parameter table, but the default view table should be the one filtering parameter table and not the other way around. So let's go back to our table and let's try to answer why we need to add plus one here. We need to add plus one because let's just select one row first, category. We need to add plus one because we want three rows for each parameter name, that selectable parameter name. And one of that row will be used to filter, for example, category. In parameter view table, our category is 4. So that will filter, or the relationship will propagate to parameter order 4, and the other relationship keys, which are 3 and 2, will filter, where's that, month and geo. So whenever we select, let me go back again. So whenever we select category, it will always show 3 rows in uh, a parameter table. So 3 rows with orders, parameter orders 2, 3, and 4. So what index does in this case is, um, it's checking, it's trying to pick the parameter order number from default. And index always starts with 0, and that's why we need to subtract 1 from row number. And row in this case is the row we created in rows table, which has been cross joined to select table. The row is this. And if this returns blank, then we return parameter order, which is this one. So again, this will use a many-to-many relationship. And this is one of the instances when a many-to-many relationship can be very useful. So let's go to our chart and test this again. Year. So I selected year, and month and geo are always visible. Quarter, same goes with quarter, and category and day of week. Okay, I hope you've learned something. Thank you for staying with me and have a good one. Bye bye.